It's like 1:39 in the morning, and I just finished watching Tsurezure Children. Really fun show. I enjoyed my time with it, even though there were certain parts of it that were they didn't necessarily drag on. There were just certain parts that didn't flow super well where I started to kind of space out of the show. But even at those points, I never felt so bored that I wanted to stop. Where with a lot of anime, especially modern shows, there's these parts where the conversations are just boring or I just zone out and am uninterested. But Tsurezure Children didn't have moments that were distinct enough in that way in order to make me want to stop it. I kept up with most of the show. It was paced really well. All of the characters had really interesting dynamics with one another. A lot of the jokes were really funny. I actually giggled at several parts watching that show, and it was a fun time. In a way, it sort of reminded me of one of the first modern shows that I had watched, or seasonal shows I had watched, I should say, Re Life, just because that was a high school romantic comedy where the subversion was that the guy who was in high school was an adult taking a pill to go back in time, and there were all of these different romantic dramas going on, and there were some jokes sprinkled in, even though most of the show was focused on the drama. And that was one of the first anime that I really got into, where I gave it a 9 or something when I first watched it in 2016, because I had watched it when it came out. Because at the time when it came out, they just dumped all of the episodes onto Crunchyroll, and so I just marathoned the whole show in the span of 2 days or something, and I really liked Real Life a lot, and that made me realize that I liked high school romance shows, or just high school dramas, shows that took place in high school. Not always overtly comedy centric, because around that time I watched Defrag, and when I watched Defrag, that show is just a high school comedy show. And I think I got through 7 episodes of it until I gave up, because I thought the first parts were pretty funny. I just ultimately couldn't get through the show. So it's about having a blend, right? It's about having characters that have good dynamics with one another in a high school context, and watching those characters, have the will they, won't they situation, and then ultimately getting into a relationship by the end, which was the well, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but there's enough juice with the relationships in the show. Even if characters don't get together by the end, there's always this sense that all of the different relationships that we're introduced to throughout its 12-episode runtime, that there's going to be something there at least, that something is developing. And with each interaction you get with these characters, it always feels like the plot is moving forward, they're not just messing around, and all of the characters have very distinct personalities. They all have interesting relationship dynamics where the two people are very different from one another, and you get the sense that with most of the characters, there's something that's going to happen there. Now, of course, there's a lot of characters that you don't get that with, where they're just kind of messing around, but they're messing around in a way that feels substantial, or at least fun. You're just hanging out with these high school characters, kind of aimlessly wandering around these new concepts of romance and stuff. And I've always liked shows like that. I've always liked shows that have been able to give you a comfy high school setting, whether it be drama, comedy, a mix of the two, or just straight up slice of life. Overtly comedic focused shows I've never done too well with, so the fact that Tsurezure Children was able to mix some plot in between the jokes, and was able to have good jokes, heartwarming, wholesome jokes, was made for a good anime. I liked it. It's been a while since I've completed a show, let alone a high school show. It's been a hot minute since I've watched a high school anime. But it was fun. I liked it. This video's I'm probably gonna put this in a compilation with some other videos or something. because I don't want to upload this as its own standalone video. So maybe this will go into a Killing the Backlog episode or something.